So, our aim with this project was to create a ship, but it's not that simple because it needs to be a ship with multiple players on it. They need to decide where to go on it, interact with the ship to get it to work, and then take it somewhere. So, we have to create a fully working multifaceted ship in multiplayer.
Is such a thing even possible?
So this was the ship I created back in sort of May time. It was based off of this ship right here. Got it sort of modeled and textured quite early on, but the main problem with it was that it was made up of lots of different component parts that were disorganized, and it didn't compile very well, so there was lots of errors and problems and glitches with it. Nonetheless, though, Zach managed to create this very early prototype of the ship moving. You could stand at a very specific section in it, and Flowgraph would sort of apply force to the ship, and it would move around. It's quite kind of. It was very simple though, so turning was very robotic, machine-like. It was very strange. So that combined with the various errors meant that at some point when term started we had to redesign the ship. So I rebuilt the entire thing from scratch, which ended up looking a bit more like this one. And the big difference with this ship was it was all very neatly labeled, and each component part was tied together to a central bone point, so we could go in and edit very specific parts of it while still keeping it all nicely compiled with no errors or anything. The next thing we did was try and get it floating in the water, whereas before it was just kind of stuck in the water. We needed it to bob and tilt and really feel like it's in the water rather than placed on top of the water, which is a real big deal for making it feel like a ship. So these were some early buoyancy tests we did. This is it going very wrong, but just getting it to sit correctly on the waterline was something we spent a lot of time doing, where Zach would make edits to Flowgraph and various buoyancy values, and I would go make model edits to try and make adjustments there. So that you can see in this little video part is the big massive object attached to the bottom of the ship. That seems to be the only way we could get it to sit correctly in the water without it capsizing. It's sort of like a big counterweight thing. So, some small errors later, and we'd managed to find a technique to propel the ship forward. We'd previously tried wind and various force appliers, but they weren't really working very well, especially with trying to work with the physics as well. So the method we eventually ended up using was similar to the method we used very early on, in that we have an object which is controlled through Flowgraph with force applying to it, but that object is not the ship. It's an object in front of the ship which we attach to the ship using rope, and so the latency between the object, the rope, and the ship creates a very natural sort of bank and turn and pull and push feel that the ship has. So the problem here is similar to the problem we had a while back when we managed to get the ship sort of working in multiplayer. The object is pulling the ship, but it's being held up. And this was by the lamp objects, which for some reason stay behind while the ship pushes against them, which is why you get these weird glitches here. So this is when I've removed the lamps and the ship is moving forward by default. Still kind of a bit glitchy because it just kills me off the bat there as soon as I spawn. And then again appears to just be held up, ramped into the ground with the object still pulling it forward. But if I shoot the ship, like Josh did a while back, it kind of wakes it up and reminds it that it has physics, and it uh, sort of pushes ahead like it's doing now. Which isn't great, but this ship is sailing at the moment, as weird as it is. We just have to work out what the correlation is between sort of reminding the ship it has physics with the shooting and it actually working okay. And interesting to point out is that after this initial phase of the ship stopping and shooting it and starting it again and stopping it again, after it catches up with the object finally, with this weird coasting along the top of the water, it does settle down and return to the normal sailing which we have seen in single player. Yeah, again, just shooting it here, giving it a little bit more, I don't know, a push, I guess? Something like that. But it does end up eventually returning back to normal. We just have to work out the how and why of that. Yeah, so all this is pretty normal now. Ship sails in multiplayer.